The conventional centralized web ecosystem is both the greatest engineering achievement in history as well as the greatest abuse of intellectual property rights, in that big technology companies worth trillions of US dollars exploited data of individual users and source code written by free software programmers without fairly rewarding the original owners. Omni Digital Asset Exchange platform operates on the principle of less is more and allows anyone from novice users to senior programmers alike to isolate the components of web pages, namely contents, layout and control script, and separate the ownerships of these components, and to buy and sell them on the digital asset exchange platform, with or without using cash money as the medium of exchange. In this presentation, we have demonstrated a new JSON format called Ownership JSON containing the hash of public key of its owner and the hash of the digital asset, thereby defining the ownerships of said digital asset. To change the owner, the hash of the new owner is added to the ownership JSON. The details of how this is done will be described in the next presentation. This will be one of the fundamental operations of Omni Digital Asset Exchange platform. The analogy for Omni Digital Asset Exchange platform using Domino Monopoly game highlights the fact that it is a self-contained ecosystem where users and programmers acting as players may exchange digital assets and build decentralized social media and e-commerce applications without using cash money as the primary medium of exchange. Comparing Omni Digital Asset Exchange with the cryptocurrencies blockchain ecosystems, the barriers of entry for the latter are much higher, while that of the former is as little as the time required for the users to watch this video and learn the fundamentals of Omni Digital Assets. Based on the principle of less is more, Omni Digital Assets will be able to build a new decentralized web ecosystem faster and with more functionalities compared to cryptocurrency blockchain ecosystem, although Omni Web are not incompatible and can also fit in with the cryptocurrency blockchain ecosystem. This presentation is divided into three parts. Part A, Omni Shell Omni.js and Omnix.js, a self-contained crypto metaprogramming shell less than 8 kilobytes to isolate contents, layout, script of web pages. Part B, Ownership JSON, a new JSON format for defining the ownership of the component using decentralized hash codes. Part C, Omni Digital Asset Exchange platform and Domino Monopoly game, for buying and selling hash-coded digital assets to build decentralized social media and e-commerce applications. Omni Shell is a JavaScript shell with crypto metaprogramming capabilities, which enable truly decentralized web or mobile application transactions, where ownerships of digital assets of model view controller entities are separated, so that an online barter trading platform for digital assets such as contents, layout and code can be established, giving rise to the novel breakthrough of enabling free individual users and free software programmers to collaborate effectively without needing a single dime of cash investment. Before we begin to explore the technical details of Omni Shell, will the viewers like to guess how much Omni Digital Asset Exchange will be worth by 2030? Based on the combined revenues of the year 2023 of Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, Google, and Apple, coincidentally abbreviated as MAGA, which exceeded $1.6 trillion and growing 9% annual with the exception of Apple. If Omni Digital Asset Exchange archives only 0.1% of MAGA revenues, that would be $1.6 billion. In this presentation, we will introduce a hypothetical board game called Domino Monopoly, which is derived from the Monopoly board game, with additional new features, where players will buy and sell domino pieces for building domino towers. The domino pieces correspond to components of digital assets including infrastructure resources, contents, layout and source code, whose ownerships belong to individual users and free software programmers. The domino towers represent social media and e-commerce applications that are built with collective efforts by free individual users and free software programmers, with the goal of achieving annual revenues of $1 billion in 2035, or about 0.1% of the annual revenue in 2023 by the top 5 technology companies, namely Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, Google, and Apple. The Domino Monopoly board game represents Omni Digital Asset Exchange platform where digital asset components can be bought and sold without using cash money as the medium of exchange. It is called crypto metaprogramming shell because hash numbers or hash codes are used to verify the integrity of data and code, as well as to represent the ownership of said digital assets. Metaprogramming implies that users may change the behavior of all three components of contents, layout and code of a web page or an application. In this presentation, we demonstrate how any user or programmer may modify HTML elements in a browser using simple commands of Omni shell. HTML elements such as name, phone, email etc. can be loaded separately from a JSON object. The function f_id fill replaces HTML elements whose ID are specified in the JSON string as shown with the new values, namely alpha for name, 123 for phone and BSC add ABC for email. The demo page for Omni shell is hosted at the web address as shown omnixtor.github.io/oxshell. Omni shell is either contained in uncompressed omni.js file of about 8 KB or compressed omnigz.js file of about 4 KB. They can be included in any HTML page using a simple script tag or loaded manually in the browser console using JavaScript include function which is published on Omni Web GitHub page. To ensure we follow our own guidelines of using hashcode to verify the integrity of the source code, we shall periodically update the hashcodes of respective files or functions on Omni Web GitHub page. Users or programmers may then verify them by executing respective hashcode functions accordingly, whose source code are also published on Omni Web GitHub page. The HTML template named instance was downloaded from www.free-css.com. The full address is given in the YouTube description. We will skip the instructions on uploading the instance HTML template to github.com as you may find it elsewhere easily. Omni shell JavaScript file omni.js is added to index.html with the script tag at line 561 as shown. Previously we have shown the final step of this demo for modifying the values of HTML elements by loading from a JSON object with name, phone and email. However, the instance HTML template does not have the ID attribute when downloaded. As such, we shall use functions in Omni shell to add the ID attribute to the HTML elements so that JSON object with name, phone and email can be loaded to the target HTML element based on the ID attribute. Upon loading the instance HTML page, an alert window pops out with a welcoming message for Omni shell. After clicking OK on the alert window, the browser console can be opened by pressing F12. Enter Omni open bracket close bracket to initiate Omni shell. The source code for Omni shell has been loaded into the browser but not initiated as we wish to give the users an opportunity to verify the source code and its hash before executing the code. Omni shell contains scripts that modify the behavior of mouse buttons and prompt window, which we will explain later. For now, we shall show you how you may add the ID attribute by right-clicking the HTML element, starting with name. Click OK when the first alert window pops up. Then enter name ID: and press enter. This will set the attribute ID name for the pointed element. Next we do the same for phone, by entering phone ID:. Finally, we enter email ID:. This syntax is called reverse polish notation where the arguments such as email go before the function name ID. To inspect the HTML element that we modify, right-click on the element that you wish to inspect, press Escape key twice, so that the default context menu appears, and choose Inspect option at the very bottom of the menu. You will see the attribute ID enclosed in HTML tag in triangular brackets. We do the same for the email and the attribute ID appears as shown. After we added the ID attribute to respective HTML elements, we can now change their values by loading preset JSON object. In the JavaScript shown, the first line defines the JSON object JA. The second line consists of 3 JavaScript functions. The first function pushes the array of ID elements onto the data stack S. The second function pushes the JSON object JA. The third function copies the values in JA onto the respective HTML elements, as appears on the web page. In this section of the presentation, we demonstrated how almost anyone, including non-technical users, may learn how to use Omni Shell to separate HTML code into contents, layout and source code. Experienced programmers would have known this technique for a long time. However, it may not have occurred to them that ordinary users may be able to acquire the relevant knowledge and skills within a few hours and hugely benefit many people. Recall the analogy of the Domino Monopoly game that we mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. We need highlight that each type of digital assets, namely infrastructure resources, contents, layout and source code, can be represented as domino pieces and being bought and sold by ordinary users and free software programmers on Omni Digital Asset Exchange platform to construct towers representing social media and e-commerce applications, in contrast to conventional software development model where ordinary users play no role and the intellectual property rights are solely assigned to the software company hiring the programmers. After the source code representing contents, layout and control of a web page are separated, they can be used to generate hash codes as identifiers. However, a digital asset identifier needs an additional identifier for its owner to meaningfully validate the ownership. In the next section, we briefly look at how we may use the hash of public key as the identifier of the owner or a user on Omni Web platform.